I wouldn't be too concerned about what am I going to do for the rest of my life. It's what am I going to do for a chunk of my life, and what's the insurance policy for me to be able to transition to something else, to be able to transition to adjacent areas. It's also going to require educational institutions to change. This notion of go to school, work, retire is dead.
Welcome to a new wave of entrepreneurship by Venture for Canada. Venture for Canada is a national charity on a mission to foster the entrepreneurial skills and mindsets of young Canadians. Our vision is a Canada where young people can equitably realize their entrepreneurial potential to help build one of the most prosperous entrepreneurial ecosystems in the world.
I am very excited to have Zabeen Hirji, who is an expert on the future of work and an executive advisor to many different organizations around the world, as well as the former CHRO of RBC, Canada's largest bank. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and the future of work. And in her Purposeful Third Act, Zabeen supports many different organizations around the world, including Junior Achievement Worldwide, where she's a board member, on questions of how do we adapt to change? How do we adapt to AI? How do we create workplaces that people can thrive and be their best? And obviously, AI is a huge part, an underlying issue related to these questions. To dive in terms of the first question, Sabine, can you describe how you think artificial intelligence is going to impact the world of work in the next decade?
Thank you, Scott, and thank you for inviting me. Love the work that you're doing at Venture for Canada. Big question. How is AI going to change the way we work in the next decade? It's started already. The journey has started. And my aspiration really is that AI will make work better for humans and humans better at work. And this is possible. It's possible if all of the various players, people from all sectors, business, government, not for profits, academia, civil society, individuals, work together in a way that we can really fully harness AI and at the same time manage and mitigate some of the risks. So what's it going to do to the world of work? The way that I see it is that AI is going to be a companion. It's going to be we're going to people are going to collaborate with AI. There are things that humans can do better, and there are things that technology can do better and can really in many ways eliminate some of the tedious tasks that many of us or most of us don't like to do. And for one of the things that sometimes the focus on conversations goes to is the impact on productivity, which is absolutely there, but it's also about better outcomes. And when I think of productivity, it's more than efficiency. It's doing things faster, but it's also about the quality of the output being better. And so you think about creativity, for example, as one of the areas that AI can help you with. And so, picture this. I was doing a presentation a few months ago in an area that was new to me. And I do a lot of work in the inclusion space. And this was really around the arts and inclusion and how the arts and museums are a place where they can foster inclusion. And I was stuck. It was, oh, how am I going to frame this? What are some ways in which I can think about this and create a mental model that can help me prepare for it? And so, off I went to one of the Gen AI tools and did some prompts. And what it produced for me was a way to think about it and some ideas. So there was this framework that I would not have contemplated myself. And it was really quite broad. And then it allowed me to pick and choose to decide which ones I could bring some expertise to, which ones I could put out there and really be provocative around. And so for me, that's a good example of the brainstorming, the creativity, really a better and a broader output and outcome. But what it also did for me, Scott, and it's something I've been thinking about, and I don't have the answers, but I have the questions. What I have found is that you do need to have a certain level of knowledge to really be able to apply judgment, to ask the right questions. It's not it's not as well suited to just put it to making prompting it to give you information or to give you data. And so the question that I've been mulling is, what are we going to do in our education system, in our workplaces, to ensure that there is a knowledge building that's happening as well?
Yeah, and I think that that point is so critical because just relying on AI to make all of the decisions, I think is a path to professional and personal challenges, and in
Yeah,
many ways, discernment, that ability to really think strategically, is more important than ever. So, for our audience, which is predominantly young people who are
yeah,
at the beginning of their careers, what advice do you have for them on how to develop the skills that will make them the most impactful in the context of this age of AI?
yeah, yeah. It's such a great question, and like most complex things, there's not a singular answer. So there are kind of there are a number of buckets I see there. First of all, there's just this what talked about a little bit is this notion of AI fluency, and I use the word fluency as opposed to literacy quite deliberately. It doesn't mean that you need to be coders and you need the technical capability that happens in the background. This is really about being able to use AI, and particularly Gen AI is really where it's now accessible to everyone. You don't need any technical skills. And so for me, AI fluency is about using some of the Gen AI LLMs that are out there, and many organizations have also things that they have in house where they are then able to actually put in their own proprietary data into there. So that's one. Experiment, use it every day, just for your life and your work, so that you get comfortable with it and overcome the fear that it's going to replace my job or replace me, and kind of move to the mindset of I can take control of this and really make it work for me. The other area in AI fluency that I think is really important is also the area of privacy and confidentiality. Be careful what you put into public systems. If the information should be maintained eh, as private, if you put it out there, it's not anymore. And so within organizations where they have their own systems, that's one of the reasons they do it, because it does put walls around it. But take on that responsibility around privacy and confidentiality, and the same around ethical AI. I think it is important for young people, for students, to ask their organizations uh, some questions around how AI is being used. And I saw this the other day. Somebody said instead of a black box, it should be a glass box. And that's where the ethical AI and ensuring bias isn't being brought into it. And we can all be advocates for that. Where I said earlier, this is about everyone working together. So there's AI fluency, just as we have precedents. We developed digital fluency in the past. We developed financial fluency, and this is the next. To me, it's the next level. The other set of skills that is hypercritical is what I call human skills. They really are, and I'll speak to them in a moment, they really are the power skills. Some people call them essential skills. Some people call them soft skills. I don't like the term soft skills. There's nothing soft about them. The soft stuff is the hard stuff. And so these human skills are really things that we as humans are experts at, and machines, at least for now, for the foreseeable future, are not able to do. And they are things like adaptability. First of all, is really, really important. We need to be open to change. We need to be flexible, and learning new ways to handle work and situations, because AI is going to continually have that impact. The top skill, I would say, in human skills is curiosity and the capability to learn and the love of learning. That's what curiosity is about. And I am sure that you are someone that has that curiosity as a well developed skill. I can tell from the conversation we had as we were starting up. It really was a curiosity based conversation. We talked about many different things, not just the topic at hand. And when you do that, you'll be surprised at what you learn. And that is, and become known as someone who is adaptable, who is curious, who has the capability to learn. And in my own career, when people ask me, what do you point to as a key success factor? That's what it is. While I worked in one organization for my entire career at RBC, I think I had 12 or 13 different jobs. I worked in the retail bank, in operations, technology, strategy, credit cards, and then moved into human resources halfway through my career. And the reason that I was able to move, while we didn't call them necessarily human skills or call them out, it is those transferable skills that I brought that the organization could say, hey, Zabeen is capable of learning new things. Zabeen is capable of bringing knowledge with her. Zabeen is capable of collaboration and working with other people. And those skills are now at a premium. And I'm happy to talk some more about them as we go through this conversation, and maybe double click on some of those. So AI fluency and human skills are really where I would suggest to students that they focus on, and ask for feedback. If you're doing an internship or a co-op, when you start that assignment, have that conversation with your manager and say, I'm here, I really want to develop better empathy, for example. And here are some ways that I think I can do it. Can you help me with that? And can you give me feedback? Talk to your colleagues and have them be a part of that. And then as you start looking for full-time work or other internships, find ways to tell that story about how you developed those skills and how you applied them in your work. And I purposely chose empathy because often it's seen as maybe one of the softest skills, but maybe not surprisingly to us, but to many, Satya Nadella, the CEO at Microsoft, has said the most important skill at Microsoft is empathy, because we need to put ourselves in the shoes of our customers. We need to see what it feels like when they're, experiencing Microsoft products. And that's a way for us to be able to continually win in the market, to be able to respond to how our customers are feeling and what their needs are. And to me, that makes, really punctuates that point.
I'm definitely also of the mind that human skills are increasingly important for everybody. I think, in particular, for people starting their careers. And there's so many different things that I could speak about. There are so many great nuggets in there. But on the topic of bias, in AI, I was just reading. I was on a text thread with some friends, and I have a friend who's a physician in the US that kind of focuses on the use of AI in healthcare. And he sent me a link to a paper he recently published. And he used the line that AI is like the money launderer of bias. And I never heard of that before, but it kind of was interesting just in the sense that all of the biases that are baked into our society, it's sort of garbage in, garbage out.
Yes.
What I mean by that is, in essence, if the data is trained on information that's biased, then it creates like a biased kind of product. So I have a few different follow-up questions, but maybe the first question to kind of address a little bit what you were talking about at the beginning of your last response. What advice do you have for listeners on how to use AI, but also to be to minimize the negative impacts of the bias that is like inherently built into a lot of these AI systems?
Yeah. Um, so it's a good question, and it's a work in progress. There again, there's no sort of silver bullets, but some of the things that I do when I use Gen AI and ask for information or something on something, and then sort of keep prompting, I ask for the source of the information, and and then kind of step back to think, okay, is this a trusted source? Or I ask for multiple, give me data from three sources, for example. Again, so there is a triangulating that happens there, but I would also take this back to this notion of glass box as opposed to black box. We as consumers and users, we need to ask those questions. So, very germane, I think, to this audience is AI is used quite a bit in recruitment. And so asking the organizations to tell you about how their systems are mitigating bias is a completely fair question. And there are differences in how that's being done. And so, you keeping in mind also, Scott, if you do a Google search, it's not perfect either. But to me, it's really this notion of all of the players have a role to play, and I do think that the bias piece, there is more onus on the creators of that knowledge and that information, that we need to ensure is being properly addressed. So, the other, there are some things you can be careful of. People talk about hallucinations where you get this crazy response. And in fact, I found when I first started using one of the tools, I asked for bio on myself, and there was hardly any information that was correct. I was shocked. RBC was not even mentioned there. I spent 40 years there, and you can probably get 2,500 Google search hits on that. Whereas today, it's completely accurate. So there's a lot of change and improvements that have been made, but you have to you have to apply judgment, and you have to think about, how am I using that information? Not everything is high stakes. In some cases, a, a, the hallucination can be um, have much less of a negative impact than in others. So using your judgment becomes absolutely critical as well.
Agreed. It's and that ability to quickly be able to discern, okay, when am I trusting the AI, or when am I taking the AI's advice? Maybe not trust. When am I taking its advice versus when am I not taking kind of the advice? One other thing you talked about earlier was the importance of socio-emotional skills, and in particular, importance of curiosity. And one thing I find in frequent conversations with young people, there's a sometimes sense that like curiosity is this innate thing, that you're either a curious person or you're not a curious person.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on that? And do you have any advice for people on how to be more curious?
Yeah. What a great question. I think that I actually don't think it's innate. I do think some of it is learned earlier in life. Doesn't mean you can't address it later, but uh, for you're going to have parents also listening to this call, or future parents. So important to really encourage that curiosity in your kids, because we're all, when we're born and young, we're all curious, and then some of that gets beaten out of us. So the way to do it, it does require going outside your comfort zone. So for me, for example, when I'm sitting next to someone at an airport terminal or on the plane, I talk to them. Now, sometimes it's you can tell very quickly if they don't want to have a conversation, you shut it off. But a lot of people want to have that conversation, and they're curious too. And so, going outside your comfort zone, you're at an event. Don't just hang out with the people you know. Step away and go to have these conversations with other people, and then pause to think about what you learned from it, because you need the positive reinforcement as well to see what the outcome is. And so there is I think, like with many of those human skills, there really are ways for us to deliberately build them, but it does require commitment, and maybe even buddies, where you learning together sometimes can be better. And I was just actually reading something that somebody who's also in their purposeful third act, after their full time, full on, was saying at the end of each week, his journaling is to sit down and say, what did I learn? And then to bring his team together and go through that exercise together. So they develop that, not just the muscle to be curious, but they create a social, relational piece around it that encourages people to do it more.
Yeah, well, and on that point, there's no learning without reflection, as
Yes,
various kind of folks have said, and I think that just even the act of taking the time to reflect on key things is a part of that lifelong journey. And to, as an overarching comment to any listeners, is like, if you think you're not curious, well, a, you're probably more curious than you potentially think you are, and b, anyone has the capacity to foster that kind of lifelong learning. Also, I think at any age as well. I think as we get
absolutely.
older,
And then it's about the reflection. I think we've lost a bit because we have this kind of speed and instant gratification, and you can almost think, oh, I'm wasting my time. But the reflection helps you to absorb it and also think about application. How can
yeah,
I use this new information that I've, and that's where I, having these conversations, other people can also give you ideas about how you can use the information.
yeah, absolutely. On the topic of career advice,
Yeah,
a lot of young people who are starting their careers have a huge amount of anxiety around, okay, I don't want to pick a career path that is not going to exist. I was talking to kind of a family friend who's just completed his radiology residency and was like a kind of a little afraid, like, what does the future radiology look like? A lot of it is reviewing, X-rays and things, and will radiologists still be as needed in the future? And I think so many other kinds of jobs, whether you're an accountant or a lawyer or you're working in customer service, across the full spectrum of the sort of wages people can earn, there's this significant amount of AI anxiety. So for these people who are making decisions about their early kind of career, what advice do you have for young people on how to kind of pick a career path that makes them more resilient, more anti-fragile in the context of a world of rapid change because of AI?
great question. And yeah, the data says that people will have between 5 to 7 careers. This is from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it's supported by research that and work that Deloitte has done and LinkedIn has done. this notion of multiple careers. What I would say, first of all, is it's not entirely new. So let's learn some of that from the past, and it's back to my own experience. Where I mentioned I had 12 or so different jobs in very different parts of the organization, and was many careers in one company. And what becomes so the acquiring of the knowledge, and let's take your radiologist example. um, that's a big commitment to go through medical school and then to be a radiologist. We still have a shortage of radiologists, but what they're going to need to do is maybe talk to the patients now. They're not just, the AI will, and there are studies that show that AI actually does a better job of interpreting um, the diagnostics that were done. And now it's okay. I can actually sit with the patient, or I can be part of the team, the other physician, that the referring physician and the radiologist. And now it's about having that conversation, communication, empathy. Because when's the last time you got a really good answer on your radiology results, right? And that could actually have better patient outcomes in the long run, because that knowledge is better understood. It takes away some of the anxiety and all kinds of things. So, what can people do? You need an expertise, but you may need to keep developing that expertise. And then you need the foundational skills. And not only is it, the jobs changing, but there's also the longevity revolution that's aligned to that, where people are living longer, they're going to live longer, healthier. You hear about the notion of the 100-year life. So that in and of itself is also going to create multiple careers. So I wouldn't be too concerned about what am I going to do for the rest of my life. It's what am I going to do for a chunk of my life, and what's the insurance policy for me to be able to transition to something else, to be able to transition to adjacent areas. It's also going to require educational institutions to change. This notion of go to school, work, retire is dead. It's going to be go to school, work, sabbatical, school, travels, school, uh, throughout our lives. There's self-learning, but even the whole educational system, maybe our 4-year degrees should be 3 years, and in 10 years you go back for the fourth. So a lot of this goes back to a lot of that. The change in the entire ecosystem will be required.
I love that idea of going back for your fourth year, kind of 10 years later. I think it would be like so interesting. Especially I've graduated from university around 10 years ago, and I think it would be so
Okay.
interesting to go back and spend a year. I'm actually taking in a few weeks the first course, like just for like a week, and it'll be my first time like in a school environment in like 10 years. And I'm actually
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of excited by it.
Exciting, yeah.
But
And the
uh,
curiosity,
yeah.
pops through. I do a lot with universities, just engaging with students, and I love that. And the learning for me there it's by the questions that they ask me. We were talking about learning and curiosity, when that helps me understand what's on their mind, what are they worried about, and
Yeah.
helps me be better at the work that I do, which is really focused on unlocking human potential and inclusion.
Related to what you were talking about earlier, and the sort of AI anxiety, and to your point, that a lot of people feel the sense that they need to pick what their career is for the next like 20 or 30 years. I think what is in some ways indisputable is that it creates a lot more uncertainty, especially the pace of change around AI. That there's a lot of lack of clarity about what the world is even going to look like kind of
Mhm.
10 years from now. And for a lot of people, uncertainty causes a huge amount of fear, but it also, with uncertainty, there's also tons of opportunity that AI kind of brings for entrepreneurs, for new applications of AI. Like in some ways, we live in such exciting times. Like it's like the early '90s in terms of the internet. So
Yeah.
a kind of question for you is, what advice do you have for young people on, let's say there's a young person listening who has a lot of fear about uncertainty, a lot of fear about the future. What advice do you have for them on how they can reframe that uncertainty to something more positive, more helpful, perhaps?
Yeah. Yeah, it's the and it's understandable. We because first of all, the information out there, there is so much, and how do you make sense of it? So I do see uh, value in really having trusted source of information. But I would say to this young person to talk to other people, to talk to people who are in the workforce already, and also understand that mobility between jobs, it has been happening. What's different now, pretty much everyone's going to have to do it. It's not going to be an option anymore. But having those conversations, seeing how people have done that, understanding what some of the supports are, and a way to, and I think this is where educational institutions can play a role as well, to help people see their capacity to learn, to adapt, and to be able to thrive, is also something that we need to spend more time on. And the balance of how much time is spent acquiring knowledge, where the half life of knowledge is 2 to 5 years and shrinking, to actually those life skills, those the resiliency, and um, I would also encourage more engagement from people people in my stage of life where they're done their full-time, full-on careers, to actually engage with people in that generation and to have those conversations, because part of their fear and anxiety also comes because there are many other issues out there: climate change, growing inequality, geopolitical risks and issues. And we can't dismiss the anxiety, but rather how do we, as you say, turn that into seeing the opportunity and being there in support of individuals.
I agree. It's holding the two things at the same time. That
Exactly.
anxiety and there's rational things to be afraid of things in the
Yeah.
future, and that I think when we there's also a lot of opportunity when we look at the future
Yeah.
as well.
And just one quick example in banking, when banking machines were first introduced, there was this huge fear that branches would close, there would, would have be tens of thousands of jobs would be lost. Well, the branches are there are probably the same number of branches, and the work that people are doing in branches is different. It's not constantly cashing checks. Even the frontline employees are helping customers with more complex work. And but overall in banking, there are many more jobs today than there were 25 years ago. And that's because the nature of the jobs has changed and people have transitioned and people have been supported in moving into those jobs. What's different is the scale and the scope this time. It's going to be everywhere. But as somebody said, it's not AI that's going to take your job away. It's the people who figure out how to use it that are going to take your job away.
I love that. I think that that's such a great framing. To wrap things up, Zabeen, do you have any closing advice for listeners in terms of how to thrive in their careers in an age of artificial intelligence?
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe I'll do a bit of a quick summary of some of the takeaways. The framework that I like to use is this is about new mindsets, skill sets, and tool sets. I've actually stolen that from JA. That's a framework that they use for their students. And I love it because the mindset shift is really about don't fear AI. It's here and it's going to help us with many, many things. Figure out and start to see it as something that can help you drive better outcomes. We've talked about creativity, productivity. We all want to be more productive. We all want better outcomes from less time. And also, though, some of the time that you free up, use that to take care of yourself. We've had this dream of technology helping us to lead somewhat more balanced lives. And think about this as human AI collaboration, but also as that liberation of doing the other things in life that are really important. And as I said already, AI won't take your job. It's somebody using AI who will. The second thing I would say is just continually and very deliberately develop those human skills or those power skills of the future. Adaptability, communication, creativity, collaboration, problem solving, inclusion, empathy. And just build that into your day. It can be really small things that you're doing, pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. And also as students, when you're working in the summer, when you're doing your internships, be very deliberate about developing those skills and getting help around that. And the skill that we've talked about a lot, which is curiosity and always learning. Be excellent at that. That is one where I say strive for excellence and become known for that. Make that your personal brand. This is a person who's adaptable, who can learn, who likes to teach, who really has that growth mindset. And so that's really the skill sets. And AI fluency, of course. And the third, which is the tool set, your organization will have tool sets for you, but also build your personal tool set of AI, especially Gen AI for your work and for your life. Use and experiment tools, but it's not just about adoption, it's also about proficiency. So prompt, fancy term, prompt engineering is a new skill because you need to ask good questions in order to get good answers. It's no different than today when we talk about communication, but now it's we're going to rely on it more, and so build your own your tool set. Learn, reflect, work with colleagues. Don't think of this as simply as a competitive tool, because the more we all use it effectively, the better it's going to be for our economy and our society. And so, become a learner and a teacher at the same time. And keep in mind whether you're early in career or later, because leadership is not a title. Leadership is our actions and behaviors. And we can all be leaders in this space by role modeling and championing ethical AI, and by keeping in mind the ultimate goal where I started, which is making work better for humans and humans better at work. So those are 5 things that I would leave folks with.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zabeen. It's been a true pleasure. I love your passion for this work, and I think you provide a lot of really interesting insights. And just your energy is fantastic to be around, and I've enjoyed both the recorded chat as well as our chat beforehand. Thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, and thanks for all the work that you do, Scott.
Thank you, and likewise.
Thanks for listening to this episode of A New Wave of Entrepreneurship. Stay connected with us via our socials and through our email list. And be sure to subscribe to us in your favorite podcast app so you don't miss our next episode. Have feedback on today's episode? Let us know directly in the app. Thanks again for listening and for joining the new wave of entrepreneurs. Till next time.